Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews. Today we are taking a look at another Mattel Jurassic World figure, and this is one of the 3 new Soundstrike figures that are coming out from the Mattel line. This is the Irritator. This is a figure that I have been greatly anticipating because it is a brand new species to the Mattel line, one that we have not had previously, so I was extremely excited about them introducing the Irritator, not to mention the fact that there are very, very few Irritator figures out there at all, so to have one from Mattel is actually really cool. Such a very obscure species for them to make. I think the only one I can really recall would be the Collect Day version. And then, of course, there is the upcoming version from Dino Hazard, which is easily, far and away, going to be the best Irritator figure that I've ever seen, probably will ever see, but this specific Mattel version is actually quite nice as well, as far as I'm concerned. Definitely not your most accurate depiction of an Irritator, but nothing in Jurassic World needs to be accurate because nothing is a full-blooded dinosaur, so it's okay that it's not exactly an accurate version of one, but regardless, it still looks really, really nice here at first glance. Definitely something I was extremely excited about getting. As far as the packaging goes, you have pretty much your standard Primal Attack packaging. Still fun to see that they are releasing Primal Attack figures, even though we are currently moving on to the Camp Cretaceous line. And then on the back here, you can see some images of sort of the action features of our Irritator, as well as the other 2 figures that are in this wave, which would be the Parasaurolophus and Majungasaurus, who is definitely my most anticipated figure from Mattel currently. So it's pretty much your standard Jurassic World packaging for the figure. So let's go ahead and get it out of the packaging and take a look at it. So here is our Irritator out of the packaging, and of course it wasn't really inside of a box or anything to begin with, so it's not like it's that amazing now seeing it standing out here out of the packaging, but I always think it looks so cool, and it's such a different way to take in the figure without the packaging behind it. It's nice to see it just kind of free and loose and on the move, and you can really see how beautiful the figure looks overall here standing before us, and I'm definitely quite excited to take a closer look at this one, so let's go ahead and just do that right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt of our Irritator, it has an extremely crocodilian type of a look to the figure. The overall head sculpt has that super crocodile-like look to it, especially right here in the snout. Like if you just took this part, you cut that out, you didn't even see it, and you looked at just the snout here with the interlocking teeth and that crocodilian-like scaling, you might actually think that this was some type of a crocodile, but no, it is actually the Irritator. But you can see how beautiful those teeth kind of interlock when you actually close the jaw, as it does have an articulated jaw, which works really, really well. Again, another awesome addition to these Jurassic World figures is the additions of very nice articulation to the figures. You can see the nostrils sculpted out really nicely. This is a figure that I feel like with a nice dark wash would look incredible as far as the detailing goes, because it just has those perfect scales for the dark wash to kind of crawl into each and every crack and crevice and bring that detail out beautifully. As far as the eye goes, you can see it's painted with a yellowish coloration, and they've given the pupil just that same blue that you see for the background of the head, but I feel like that was kind of a bad choice. I feel like a black pupil would have looked a lot better, because the pupil now kind of almost doesn't look that dark. You can see the eye in general doesn't really stand out as much. As far as the usage of the paint that they've gone with here, I feel like if they would have used like a black pupil as opposed to that like bluish coloration, it definitely would have been a bit more striking and stood out a little better. But it's not the end of the world, just kind of a minor nitpick. You can also see that kind of crest up there on the middle of the Irritator's head. Once we open the mouth, we can get a look at that tongue, which is beautiful, absolutely sculpted to the max as far as the texturing goes, and really nicely glossed. It looks beautiful as far as the gloss coat goes. The inside of the upper part of the mouth also has some decent detail, but nothing over the top, and unfortunately no paint or anything. Each of the teeth are all sculpted individually, and they are beautifully painted actually. They all look very nicely done. There's no sloppiness that I can see on the teeth at all, so that is really a huge plus as far as the inside of the mouth goes for this Irritator. It is really, really nicely done, and that gloss coat looks beautiful on that tongue, making it shine and glisten like it has that really nice saliva-y type look. As we start to move back into the neck, you can see how nice those scales continue to look. They look beautiful. They have a little bit of a finer scaling here on the underside of the neck, and a little bit of a rougher type of a scaling up here on the top of the neck. You also have kind of like this sail-like appearance to the top of the head of the Irritator, which I think looks really, really cool. And again, you have this very nice dark blue, and then once you get to here, you have this lighter blue kind of creep in, and just really makes it look super flashy. But I feel like the tones and the way they appear kind of in contrast to each other looks really, really nice. I actually am a big fan of like the light blue playing off of that darker blue. As you continue to move down into the body, the main part of the body, and you can now see that that scaling is very large and very rough looking on the actual body of the dinosaur. You can also pick out the rib cage right there, which is nicely shining through. The arms themselves have a beautiful kind of a softer scaling, a very reptilian-like scaling there, almost snake-like or lizard-like there on the arms. The hands are sculpted beautifully. No nail paint, unfortunately, which is definitely a downside as far as this figure goes. I would have really liked to have had nail paint on the fingers, but we're kind of accustomed to that at this point from the Mattel line. One day they're going to start releasing figures that have the nail paint continuously on them, and we are all going to be completely blown away by that. Coming back here into the back, you can again see the nice sail area of the Irritator, as well as that beautiful kind of light blue playing off of that darker blue. And then once you get to about here, the light blue disappears, and now you only have that darker blue. You also have more of that really nice rough scaling, beautiful muscle tone there in the thigh area, as well as really nice large bulging calf muscles. As we move down the leg, the actual scaling here in the leg is really, really well done. You can see some beautiful scoots as we run down the feet, and then some very nicely sculpted out nails. Once again, no paint on the nails though, which is really sad to not see paint on the nails of the feet. I would have liked to have at least seen it down here. And then we continue to lead out the rest of the tail here. You can see the really nice scale detail, nice curve to the tail, nothing over the top or anything. Again, the tail is a little bit short, as they almost always are when it comes to the Mattel line. You can also see that the sail is on now the upper side and the underside a little bit right here, but unfortunately the blue paint kind of stops dead right here, and we don't have anything back here for this area of the sail, which is definitely a little upsetting. I feel like the blue running back here would have definitely made it look a little nicer. At the same time, it kind of gives like that sail sort of a little bit of variation of color, now having a brown area and a blue area, but I personally would have rathered having the blue the entire way through as far as that sail goes. You also have a little area here on the underside of like a light gray, but that's it, just this one little area. This also would have probably looked nice if it had run like up on to the underside of the throat and stuff, maybe just gave it a little bit of color variation. There is actually the Jurassic Facts app if you would like to add the Irritator to your collection. The underside of the feet actually have some nice detailing to them as well. If we look at the opposing side, you're not really going to see very much difference, again, because it is a completely neutral figure. I mean, you can see the legs are forward in the way it stands, but the detailing of the body itself is pretty much going to be exactly the same as what you had seen over here just now on this side. So the actual body itself is pretty much the same, but you just have the legs in a little bit of a different position as far as the way it was positioned there. It's kind of walking with the left leg forward a bit. And one thing that I always do love about the Mattel line, and I state this continuously, is how like here you can kind of see like the skin looks like it's sort of bunching a little bit, but now as you pull the leg back, now it sort of looks like it's stretching. So it's almost like you can make the sculpt do what you need it to do when it comes to the positioning of the body and the way the skin would be reacting. Such a cool little addition. But the sculpt is absolutely beautiful on this figure, as they usually are when it comes to Mattel. They always deliver an incredible sculpt, very, very highly detailed, as well as the paint job is also quite nice. So a really, really cool Soundstrike Irritator figure. As far as a size goes, for a length, you are looking at about 12 3/4 inches, almost 13 actually inches. It's very, very close, or about 32.5, 33 centimeters, somewhere in that range. And the highest point of the body would be the head, and actually the back, so about 5 inches or about 13 centimeters. And then for the head, about 3 3/4 inches or around 9.5, 10 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Golovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon next to our Irritator figure, our Soundstrike Irritator. And you can see next to these figures that it does sport some pretty good size. I actually think I was a little shocked that it's a little bit smaller than I expected it to be, but it's still pretty darn nicely sized overall. Still a really sizable figure in general, because you can see it next to the Papo Rex, and that being a pretty big figure, you can see that the Irritator is as well. It's just as far as a Soundstrike version goes, I felt like it was going to be a little tiny bit bigger. Not by much, just a little bit, but regardless, still an absolutely beautiful looking figure that does have some decent size to it. As far as the action feature and the sound strike ability of our figure, if we put the mouth open like that, we can move it around. And as you can see, it has a plethora of noises and some really cool kind of articulation to the figure, nice action feature. I really wish that Mattel would kind of start to utilize like newer sound bites, like come up with some sort of new sounds for some of these other figures, but they kind of just reuse the same sort of Predator type sounds. I think that might have been like some of the Indominus sounds and stuff, which, you know, it is what it is. They only have so much that they're probably given to use and work with as far as sounds go, but I feel like if they would actually start creating some sounds, like Terra by Batat kind of comes up with some pretty unique sounds for their figures at times, I feel like that would also be a really cool touch on the part of these figures. But as far as articulation, we do again have the articulated jaw, which works perfectly. You can see articulation in the neck, again part of the action feature. I don't want to move it too much or he'll start yelling at me. You can see the articulation in the arm, which also moves away from the body. Articulation here in the legs, which moves very nicely and also away from the body a bit. And then the articulation in the tail, which does activate the action feature and sound feature, so we don't want to move that too much either. So this Soundstrike Irritator figure from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line is a really nice looking figure overall. Pretty much just as nice as every other Soundstrike Mattel figure that we've had so far, except now we have a really nice looking Irritator, which is something that, as far as I'm concerned, is really awesome because, again, like I had stated earlier in the review, there are so few Irritator figures out there. So Mattel making one is absolutely awesome because it's something I really did not expect. If you would have asked me a few years ago when this line started if there was a chance we would get an Irritator in the line, I would have probably said no, I really don't think there is. But here we are a few years later, and lo and behold, we have the Irritator right here in front of us. So I will commend Mattel on doing an incredible job as far as introducing so many new species to the Jurassic World toy line, well, to the Jurassic toy line in general, whether it's Jurassic Park or Jurassic World. I think it's safe to say that Mattel has probably introduced more species to the toy line than any company has in the past. They have just given us a ton, with even more yet to come, and some of the most obscure random species you wouldn't have expected, like a Seats and now a Irritator. There's just so much awesome stuff that Mattel is pumping out into this Jurassic World toy line, and this Irritator is definitely a very unexpected but a beautiful figure overall. I absolutely love the sculpt of the figure, having that very crocodilian type look up there on the head sculpt, and then very nice rough scaling the entire course of the body pretty much. It looks very beautiful, and even the positioning kind of the body with the way it shows up is really nice. I think it has kind of like a crouching position to it almost, like maybe it's looking down to get some sort of a fish or something along those lines. So that as well is a really cool aspect of the figure that I definitely think was a nice touch on the part of Mattel, having that little bit of like a crouched positioning to it. But the sculpt overall is really beautifully done. The paint job as well is quite nicely done, but there's not really too much to it, but that's pretty much how Mattel works when it comes to their paint jobs. Of course, I would have liked more color variation to it, especially when it comes to like the blue leading out onto the sail, but unfortunately, we don't really get paint on the tail too often. I also would have liked to have some nail paint on both the hands and feet, but again, it's just something that's, I guess, not in the cards for right now. You can always paint them yourself if you would like, but I like to keep my figures as original as possible. But I really think the choices of like the blue and the light blue and then the brown body, I think they play off of each other really well. They all look very natural, but have a bit of a flashy appearance to them. So the overall paint scheme is definitely very nicely done. The overall sculpt is absolutely beautifully done. And then you have incredible articulation and really cool action features and beautiful sounds as well. So this Irritator is an absolute win in every possible way. This, along with the other two Soundstrike figures, have just recently started showing up here in the United States at different Walmarts, so my suggestion for you to get a hold of this is probably to check your local Walmart, and hopefully it will be there. If it is not now, it should be soon, so keep checking back, and it should arrive in the very near future. One way or another, though, I definitely recommend picking up this very cool Irritator figure from Mattel, and I also hope that you will like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.